So I start this?
Yes. That reminded me of Star Wars. I should go first. You should go. Remember that in one of the Star Wars.
Welcome to After the Session. My name is Adam Frower, and I'm sitting here with Elliott Connie, who will be here every single time. And in this podcast, what we're going to do is we're going to look really closely at Elliott's podcast that he does for iHeartRadio and for Through the Black Effect, called Family Therapy. And we're going to pull apart session by session that he does, episode by episode, and look at, in essence, what lessons we can glean that are applicable to each of us. I think sometimes when we listen to podcasts, we listen as a form of entertainment, where we just listen to other people's lives and we're entertained by their lives, but we don't really try to take on any meaning making of our own. And so this is really going to kind of pull apart these meetings that he has with the family, and in essence say, don't look at this just as entertainment. Look at this as an opportunity to transform your own life. Elliott, you want to add anything to that?
No, I think that's true. I think you're right. I think a lot of times we watch people's lives just to be entertained, but it was really important to me. If I'm going to make content like this, I want people to be entertained for sure, but I also want people to be inspired, and I want people to have their lives be impacted. So this particular podcast is not just, oh, I listened for an hour and I just, spent an hour being entertained, which I think has value. Like, we need to be entertained, and we need to be distracted from the rigmarole of life and the hecticness that is our lives. Totally get that. But this family volunteered to be a part of season one and expose their own healing journey. And my hope is people will be able to get help along their own healing journeys from having listened to this podcast, and also have some transformation happen in their lives. So I don't know anybody better in the field of psychotherapy than Dr. Adam Frower at listening really closely to themes and ideas and things that are happening in the therapy session to be able to highlight them. So if you're a clinician, and you're listening to this podcast after the session, welcome. This should hopefully probably make you better at your job of being a clinician. But if you're a layperson listening, also welcome, because we're not just highlighting things about the therapy here. We're going to be highlighting things that you should have heard in each episode that you can apply in your own life and be a better mom or dad, husband or wife, son or daughter, employee, business owner, leader in your community, whatever it is you're trying to be. Just be a better version of you.
Yeah, I really love that and appreciate that. So with that introduction, I know we want to keep this to a, feasible time length. We don't want you to spend your whole lives listening to this. So we might as well just jump right in. And so one of the things I guess you probably need to know about the dynamic that Elliott and I have is that Elliott is very much a clinician. And I am very much a researcher. So the way that we have learned to work together is Elliott does beautiful work, and then I look at it really, really closely, and I come to Elliott with a series of questions. Questions to say, why did you do it like this? How did you know how to do it like this? And so we're going to take that similar format where I'm going to ask a bunch of questions. I'll probably point out some things as well. And don't be surprised if Elliott's initial answer is, I don't know, because he probably hasn't thought about these questions before, but you'll be amazed at how quickly he'll come to a beautiful, succinct answer. So if he says, I don't know, don't be alarmed. He'll come around. So one of the questions that I have, so I'll just go back to
Well, actually, Adam, let's set up season one. Let's tell them what it was. Because some people might be here not understand. And if you're here and you haven't listened to Family Therapy, go over to wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple, Google, Spotify, and listen. Because here's what season one is, and then we'll go into Adam's questions.
Of course.
So the Black Effect Podcast Network had an idea. can Elliot interview? Can we get a family to volunteer to experience Elliot's solution focused work? And we will track the family through an entire season, which ended up being 17 episodes, and track what happens with this family. Now, this particular family, there were three people that participated. There was a people in a relationship. So I'll say husband and wife because, but technically they're not married, but they've been in a relationship for 10 years. They have two kids together. They live together, but that became a bit of a question through season one. I'm not going to tell you what happened, but that became a bit of a question through season one. And then the woman in that couple, her father, a man named Freddie, was a participant. And Freddie had made several mistakes along his parenting of his 9 children. The woman from the couple, her name was Jay, was experienced some of those mistakes, and the father was, as they would say, in them streets. He was drinking and using drugs and incarcerated for a period of time, and he missed out on some of the kids' lives, and he wasn't making super wonderful choices. But now he's out. He's out of incarceration, and he wants to create healing amongst his family. So that was the family dynamic that we worked with throughout this first season. And to be honest with you, it was a really incredible journey. Like it was unbelievable. So those are the sessions that Adam and I are going to be discussing. Adam's going to be probing me with questions like why I did what I did, why I didn't do what I didn't do, why what I was thinking when I was doing, certain things that I was doing. This podcast is almost like a cliff notes of that one. But if you haven't listened, go listen. I promise
Yeah.
you, you won't be disappointed.
Yeah, you're gonna need to listen to that one in order to understand this conversation. So use
Right.
them definitely in tandem. I just
Right.
wanted to add one thing that you left out just briefly. So Jay is the woman in the relationship, and the man in the relationship, his name is David.
David. Yep.
And then Freddie is Jay's father.
Yes.
So those names will come up quite regularly. But the
Yeah.
other thing I wanted to add is throughout, because this was kind of a production, the Black Effect kind of produced it. So there are moments, it's not just a free-flowing session, but there are moments of commentary throughout as well. So some of the things that we're going to talk about and some of the questions I have came from commentary that Elliott put into the middle. So you'll
Yeah.
probably also need to know that format to understand.
Yeah, and
Um,
this is kind of crazy. A lot of people know the past few years, I've been spending a lot of time in Los Angeles and TV production and different things. This was my first like produced piece of content, so a bit of a learning experience for me as well. So Adam, this is going to be fun. Like we've always talked about therapy, but now we've always talked about therapy. We've been doing this for over a decade. Like, here's the session. Adam listens to it, shares his ideas. We now have published 3 books together. Shameless plug, newest book coming out. Go get it. Shameless plug. Shameless plug.
Me too,
Shameless
shameless
plug.
plug. Get it?
But our ideas that have gone into these books actually came from these conversations. So you and I observing and talking about therapy is not new. However, this is a new experience a bit where the process involves a produced show. Like
Mhm.
this, like for you to say something like some of my questions came from the commentary and some of my answers are going to be related to production things that took place throughout the process. So this is fascinating how it's so similar to what we've always done, but yet so different. Another thing that's different, our relationship is deep. I tell people all the time, like we met at a conference, and it's just like meeting any other colleague. If you had a video camera of us meeting, there was nothing different of us meeting at our conference than meeting any other colleague. However, somehow it grew into a friendship, and then somehow it grew even beyond that. And we always say that I don't think we can get any closer, and then something transpires and we get even closer. Like that's been the dynamic for over 10 years. But the other thing that's unique about this, and I find really interesting, is in the very infancy of our dynamic together, we were talking on the phone every Monday for an hour. This was before Zoom. This is even before Skype was really, super well known. And we would talk every week for an hour about solution focused brief therapy, about the work you were doing. At that time, you were in Chicago, and the work I was doing. At that time, I had a therapy practice in Keller, Texas. And we would just talk about these concepts. And no one cared. Like it was just like me and Adam talking on the phone. We didn't have any clue that anyone would care. And now you fast forward a decade plus, and it's like, Adam, the whole world cares. Like, we have books and podcasts, a large following on social media and our email lists. Like, and before I say anything else, I'm saying this to say, like, this just feels different because when we started, no one cared. It was just you and I talking on the phone. We would have to like beg, hey, Adam and I have been talking. We did our first presentation a year and a half into us talking on the phone. So like we were just like, hey, we got these cool ideas, and we'd have to like reach out to these conferences. We had some cool ideas. Can we share them at your conference? Like we had to like solicit them. And now people are coming to us asking us to go to these amazing events and these amazing places, do these amazing things. And it's so unusual that we could have just as easily done this on the phone like we used to, except lots of people care now. So we'll have an audience this time, which is also really cool. And before we say anything else, we're both aware that none of that would have happened without the support of you guys who are listening to this. So we love you. We would not have book 3, shameless plug, shameless plug, shameless plug. We would not have book 3 if you guys didn't care to support us. And like Adam and I would still be friends.
Mm.
Adam and I would also still be talking every week about because what brought us together was this love and passion for solution focused brief therapy. But our lives, our work wouldn't be exposed to so many people if you guys did not support us. So before we dive into the session, I just wanted to say how much we love and appreciate all of you because you've allowed us to live a very, very exciting experience and given value to the stuff that we do.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. All right, so in that vein, we're going to try to give back to you as much value as we can give. So you ready, Elliot?
Yes, sir. Not that you care. You don't care if I'm
I was
ready.
gonna say, you think you're ready.
Yeah. And you say that as if you care one bit. If I had said, nah, man, I ain't ready. It doesn't change your attitude, your persistence, nothing.
Nope, we're going. We're going. All right. So first thing that you said, and I think this theme might come back multiple times, but one of the very first things you said before you even got into any of the sessions with any of the family members was something that sounds a bit alarming. So I just want you to clarify a little bit what you mean. You said pain is a part of life,
Mm,
but when you find your purpose, the pain doesn't hurt anymore. And then you went on to even say suffering is unnecessary.
mm.
And my question is, I think I know the answer, but my first question is, do you really believe that? Do you really believe that when you find your purpose, pain doesn't hurt?
Yes.
That's what I was expecting you to say. And I'm gonna push back and I'm gonna be like, but wait a second. Isn't everyone's life still painful at some point? So
Yes.
if I know my purpose, why am I still feeling some pain?
Because it's not pain. Like, so let me go back and give context to that statement, which I know might sound unusual to some of you guys who don't know me and might be hearing this ridiculous thing for the very first time. But let me give it some context. I grew up with a tremendous amount of pain and trauma. I have wrote about it in books. I've talked about it on stages. My father was a pretty angry and aggressive person, and I carried that with me into my teenage and late teenage years. And I can remember being 19 years old and thinking, like, how do I heal from this? And number one, I think we think of healed as a destination, like I'm gonna get healed and then I'll be done. Like And I don't think that's accurate. But I can tell you, as I was in college, I was a marine biology major at the time. Like when I first went away to college, that was my focus. And I remember taking an intro to psychology class. Never forget it. I enjoyed the professor. We studied sleep. You know, when you take an intro to psychology class, that's where you learn about what REM sleep is. And you just learn function of the brain, and one of those functions is sleep. And I remember thinking, what can you do with a degree in psychology? So I went and talked to the professor, and she said, like, all the jobs you could do with a degree in psychology, whatever. And one of the things that she said was you could be a counselor. Now, it's a really long story. That was the beginning of the journey that led to me becoming a counselor. But I do remember thinking, if I went through all of this trauma to help people overcome their traumas, then that now has purpose. And now I wasn't living my life with like, why has this happened to me and what is wrong with me? It's almost like the journey now was my privilege. And when your pain has a purpose, it's not an injury, it's an uncomfort heading in the direction of something positive. So I'll give you another really good example is I am currently on a weight loss journey, and I've lost about 30 pounds. And it's uncomfortable. Now, last night, I fully intended to go to the gym. Um, I came home, my car wasn't working. I had to deal with that this morning. Crazy story. But it's like, all right, I got to do a workout whether I can go to the gym or not. So I did a workout at home and I went running. My neighborhood has some hills and it's really hot outside. So I waited on nighttime. I live in Texas, waited on nighttime. And I'm running around my neighborhood with these hills and it hurt. But I did not experience that as pain or injury. I experienced that as purposeful uncomfort on my way to a desirable outcome. And the desirable outcome was I want to get a good run in so I can continue along my weight loss journey. So that's what I mean when I say the pain doesn't hurt. Like, was I aware that I'm like my lungs are burning? Yeah. But if you're just sitting on your couch doing nothing and your lungs are burning, that's super alarming. But if you're like out running, knowing that I'm doing this activity because the ultimate goal I want is this particular fitness thing, then all of a sudden that's not an injury or it's not something to fix. It's just the anticipated struggle along the way to achieve the desirable outcome. So my childhood had some difficult moments in it, but now I realize, oh, that was all being orchestrated so that I could become a counselor. I understood things like pain and empathy and sympathy and struggle. Because if you come from just a total life of privilege, you cannot be a psychotherapist. You don't have that connective tissue. And I have tremendous connective tissue. So that's what I mean when I say pain doesn't hurt when it has a purpose. Because I was out running last night in tremendous pain, but I didn't process it as pain because I knew what the purpose of it was.
So I think you added a layer of complexity here, which I think is important, and you kind of added the layer of meaning making. The experience, the physical experience is the same, but what it means is something different.
Yes,
And it doesn't mean suffering, it means goal achievement. But you also just said something I think that's super powerful, and it kind of leads me into my next question because you said, in essence, when I was a kid, I experienced a lot of discomfort. I experienced a lot of pain. But looking back, I have made meaning of it.
mm,
And now it hurt then, it was painful then, but now purpose is attached to it. It has changed the way I view my job. It's changed the way that I connect to people.
absolutely.
So you implied that meaning could even take place around something that has happened in the past. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. And Adam, like we do this all the time. Like again, you and I are very close. So there are things I know about you that the average person might not know. Like, for example, Adam's wife, Becca, has carried three babies to term. I happen to know, in particularly the first one, it was very uncomfortable for her. And she spent the last however many weeks, like literally bedridden because it was like very uncomfortable for her. Now, if I could go back in time and ask Becca, hey, how you feeling right now? As she's, 8.5 months pregnant and however big she must have been and however uncomfortable she must have been bedridden, she probably would have been like, horrible. This is not awesome. But now that child is a 19-year-old, 18, 19-year-old. And now if I say, Becca, looking back, was it worth it to produce this human? It's like, yeah, we have given meaning in reverse because now I know and love that child, that experience that happened 18, 19 years ago, which was super unpleasant, super uncomfortable, not a desirable experience that I would love to repeat. But now it has meaning because I went through all of that to earn the right to be that child's parent. We do that all of the time. Like we give meaning to things in reverse consistently. And I'm quite sure if I told Becca, um, Becca, I'm sorry to say this, but Rachel has to go back in at the age of 18, 19. She's got to go back in, and you have to do that again. I'm quite sure of two things. Becca probably wouldn't be thrilled, um, but I'm also sure she would do it because she's like, but I love this child. Like if we were if obviously we're living in a fictitious world here of me saying this, but let's say Rachel, that's the child that was born 18, 19 years ago. Let's say Rachel has been diagnosed with like the rarest disease in the world, and the only cure is you got to go back into mom's womb and be rebirthed, and then the illness is cured. I have zero doubt Becca would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Zero doubt. And not because she wants to. And Becca wouldn't perceive the uncomfort throughout those 9 months of like recarrying Rachel. She wouldn't perceive that as awful pain, trauma. She'd receive it as this is what I'm doing to save my child's life.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So, yeah, Adam, I mean, I hadn't thought about it until you asked in that way, but we give meaning to things that happened in the past. And that's how you create like a new experience of something that happened. And we do that all the time. That is a very normal humanistic thing.
So you just said a really important word, which was going to be in my next question. And the word was create. You said in this commentary, you said, I want to create healing in this world.
Facts.
And and I think that what you're getting at is exactly, instead of asking the question, I'll just make the connection that you just created. And in essence, it is by looking at the past and by changing the meaning of what happened in the past and aligning the meaning with my purpose, I create healing.
Yes.
So I think for all of you who are listening or watching this, that's one of the takeaways I think that's hugely important. And I'm going to go through and I'm going to show you kind of how this happened in the session. But I think understanding you have the power to create healing in your life by connecting past experiences to your purpose, that can change how you live your life. So I want to give you an example. The session starts with Elliott talking to Jay. Again, that's the woman in the relationship. And he gets just a few questions in. The first question he asks is, are you married? She says no. And he says, do you have a partner? And she kind of hims and haws and says, I guess you could call him my partner. And then Elliott asks a question. What do you think he hopes you will achieve by talking to me today? And listen to the answer. She says, I don't know. I don't think he would give a very clear answer. So she's literally saying, he's not really my partner. I guess you could kind of call him my partner. I'm not even sure what he would say would be helpful for me in this process. And Elliott's job is exactly what he just laid out, to create healing, and I would add a word, create change by connecting purpose to past experiences. So listen to this series of questions and answers. He says, "What do you do for a living?" And she says, "I'm an analyst at a bank." "Do you like that work?" And she says, "No, I don't. But it allows me flexibility. It helps me pay my bills. It helps me take care of my family and allows me to do what I need to do in this life." Now, do you hear those things? She is teaching Elliott what version of her. She's, in essence, said, "My family is really important to me, and I need to do certain things during this life." And he says, "If you could have any job, what would it be?" And she says, "I would invest in real estate." And he says, "Do you like doing that?" And then listen to what she says. She says, "I enjoy helping women feel better about themselves." So this is not about a job. This is about taking care of her family and helping women feel better about themselves, right? So all of this he goes through several things and then in essence says, "What do you want out of this? What do you want out of this process?" And in essence, she says, "I want to become the old version of myself. I want the old Jay back." So she went from, "I don't know. I don't even know what my partner is. I don't really like my job," to, "I need to get the old version of myself back." That series of questions created a new reality. Elliott, how would you explain how you knew how to do that to get her to a place where she says, "You know what I really want? I want the old me back."
So you guys all remember Adam earlier saying he's going to ask me a series of questions, and sometimes I'll say I don't know. But then I'll somehow come up with an answer. Well, this is a moment where my first answer is I don't know. Like I don't know. But my attempt to answer your question, Adam, is and this, by the way, this is probably the number one thing I want people to get from listening to our podcast here. And that is, we started off by talking about a really important concept, Adam, which is like if pain has a purpose, it removes suffering.
Yeah.
Um, so like, how do we find our purpose? Well, in essence, we start therapy sessions by asking people about an outcome, most commonly by saying, "What are your best hopes from our talking?" That's a really powerful question. Most psychotherapy starts with a problem-oriented question. What brings you into therapy today? We don't ask that. We want to know what's the outcome you want to achieve from therapy, which in essence is us saying, who are you? It's us saying, like, what version of you do you want to be at the end of this? That's really what we're saying. The challenge is most people don't know. So if I say, like, who are you? What version of you do you want to be? Most people don't know that. And not because and they don't know because they don't know. It's just like they haven't really thought about it. I believe so. The answer to your question is I believe this so deeply that I know if I keep asking, you'll get there. Because like if I said to you, Adam, like um trying to you're like the smartest person I know, so I'm trying to think of a question you genuinely wouldn't know the answer to. If I said to you, Adam, how long do you have to boil collard greens? You would very likely say to me, I don't know. Right?
Probably say not at all because they're not good. But
Adam, you just started. There's going to be a war in our comments about that. You have no idea the shitstorm that you're just unleashed. But you haven't lived a life where you've been around a lot of collard greens cooking. So if I said, Adam, how long do you have to boil collard greens? The the probable answer you'd say is, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because that's actually information that you don't have. It's like, and I could poke, come on, Adam, tell me. Come on, Adam, think. Come on, Adam, think. Come on, like I could poke, but that is information that just does not exist in your brain. But if I said to you, Um, like Adam, uh what kind of human do you want to be tomorrow? You might say I don't know, but I know it's in there, right? I like you might say I don't know, but it's really because you've been dealing with so much difficulty. You're so focused on getting through today that you're
Mm.
not thinking about who you're evolving into. And your tomorrows are really important. Your relationship with Becca will continue to evolve as your children age. Your role and responsibility in their lives will change. Grandfatherhood is at some point in your future. Your relationship with your parents and siblings, like tomorrows are important because all of those things are dynamics. Our work continues to evolve, and we couldn't imagine that we'd be here 10 years ago. Imagine where we'll be 10 years from now. So, like, asking you, like, Adam, what version of you do you want to be tomorrow? You're very likely to say to me, I don't know. But unlike the collard green example, it's not because that information does not exist within you. It's really because you haven't really articulated it out loud before. I've been doing this job working with people for so long. I know that if I can ask useful questions, which you and I obsess about, you'll probably get to an answer because that information does live within inside of you.
I think that is all really true, but I think there's also another key to this because you get to a very similar place of a what version of you. And I think with David, you transition to David in just a minute. And one of the things that I want to like highlight for people is you have to ask yourself these kinds of questions. You have to, in essence, say, what is my purpose? What version of myself do I want to be? Because if you don't, pain is suffering. If you do, pain is purposeful. And you can also look at, so then you transition to David and you ask him in essence, can I get to know you? What do you do? I understand you play sports. And he goes on to say, like, I had a very successful football career. I played in high school. I earned a full scholarship. I went to the Ohio State. We won a national championship. I went to the NFL. I played several different teams. And then you asked him a question. And I think these are the kinds of questions that help us get at purpose. You said to him, you must have had one hell of a fire underneath you. What difference did having that fire make? And this is a huge, what we call a presupposition that your success, all those achievements, weren't just luck. They were results of work and effort. And you must have had this fire burning in you. Tell me about that fire. And I think that's one of the things that we need to do in order to understand our purpose is to say, what's driving my successes? When I don't give up, how do I keep going? How did you know how to infer or presuppose there must have been a fire there? Because I think that's an important skill that people need to get is how to make good presuppositions about success.
So here, uh, Adam, I love that question. Um, you have to convince yourself, or not even convince yourself, you have to accept that all people, including you, are incredible. Now, here's what we tend to do, Adam, and why I think what you just said is so incredibly important. I used to look at people like you and think your life was easy and my life was hard, and I would be envious of your life being easy. I've now realized my life is hard and so is yours because life is hard. Now, there are varying degrees of hard, and some people have more of their fair share of hard and all of those things. I totally accept that. But life is challenging and will pose challenges, and all people have to overcome something. Like Adam, you are one of the most incredible people I've ever met. I consider it a privilege and honor to get to call you a friend and work with you. You have achieved the highest level of education that we offer in the Western world. Like you have a what we refer to as a doctorate degree. So when someone calls you Mister, they are inaccurately labeling you because your name is Dr. Adam Frower. I've learned now You know what? Adam didn't get a doctorate degree because it was easy. I guarantee you there was some days along that journey that you were like, I don't know if I can keep doing this. I know there were days where it's like, I don't feel like writing this paper tonight. I'd rather sleep. Again, I know you really well. You had a girlfriend slash fiance slash early marriage along that journey. And it's like, this is really hard that I have to work because I also know you worked when you did this. So I've got to work. I've got this wife at home. I've got to work. And then when I come home, I can't spend time with this loving woman that I adore so much. I now have to lock myself in a room and write a bunch of papers and read a bunch of articles. Like, that's hard. The most valuable question people can ask themselves is number one, you've got to accept that everyone's journey is hard. And the reason that's important is because you stop comparing yourself negatively to people to appear to have it easier than you. And number two, it allows you to include yourself in that everyone's got it hard. And if everyone's got it hard, then we've got to start looking at our own history and asking ourselves, how did I overcome the hardships along my journey?
Hmm.
What does that say about me? What do I have inside of me that allows me to keep going when I thought about quitting? And what does that mean about me? And all of those things, those are beautiful questions. And to be honest with you, I wasn't asking those questions in the beginning. I would look at a guy like Adam and I would meet, I mean, let's say Adam and I met when I was, in the throes of struggle, like I was 17 years old. I would have met Adam at 17, and around that same age, Adam would have been like, I'm on my way to Brigham Young University where I'm going to major in this or that. I'm going to do this. And I would have looked at him and thought, man, it's so easy for him. Because for me, getting into college was such a struggle. And Adam's got just an easy life. He's got loving parents that dote on him and have give him all. But that's actually not true. Adam's had his hardships along the way as well. And no one who's accomplished anything. And by the way, I can highlight Adam's achievement of a doctorate degree because it's really easy. Sometimes the achievement is I got up this morning, I got out of bed, and I got dressed when like the weight of the world was on my shoulders, and the last thing I wanted to do was face the world. Sometimes, like, that blows me away. Like, I'm very impressed, Adam, that you have a doctorate degree, but I'm equally impressed on those days where it's like, I don't want to face the world today. And I've got good reason to not want to face the world today. There are challenges and problems happening. I don't even want to pick up my phone because I know I'm going to be getting text messages from people. I know I'm going to be getting reached out from people. Like, I know there are things coming my way. I don't want to face the world. But yet I did. I got up and I got dressed and I brushed my teeth and I responded to those text messages. I responded to those emails. I called those people back that are, angry with me, whatever it is, whatever the situation is. So you've got to remember that, yeah, Adam's got some amazing stuff in him. Um, that's why he's able to do the stuff he's able to do. But if he's got amazing stuff in him, then that means I also have amazing stuff in me. And the
Yeah.
important thing about this journey is if I can learn to see it in other people, then I can also learn to see it in myself. And that's when your world changes.
I think that's really, really beautiful. And I also think you do something with David as well. David outlines like he had a very difficult life, right? He grew up in the inner city in eighth grade. His teacher told him that he should drop out, like all of these kinds of things. And he was not getting positive reinforcement ever. And then on the football field, something changed and people started to come and watch him play football. And you asked him a question, which I think is a really valuable question. And it helps us do what we talked about at the beginning, which is create meaning that leads to purpose. The question you asked him was, what was it like for you to get the attention when other people were doubting you so much? And he goes on then to talk about how he wanted to be a good example for his little brother.
Mm.
And you can see how adversity, difficulty, challenge became meaningful when he says, I need to do this for my brother. Now there's purpose in this. And later on, he goes on to talk about how important his sister was to him and how important his mom is for him. And I think that's the kind of question when we're trying to each make meaning of our lives and our circumstances, we have to say, what's it like to face all this difficulty and still want this thing? What's driving me? Why is this so important? And I think that's something that you constantly come back to. And now I'll just make one final transition because we probably need to keep this close on time. But you try and transition to Freddie, the dad, Jay's dad, and you ask him what he wants to get out of this. And he answers really easily and really succinctly, but there's a really important thing that you do. And he said, I want to improve my relationships with my kids greatly.
Mm.
And you picked up of all of that, you picked up greatly. And instead of saying, look, you've been to prison and you've been doing drugs and you've been on them streets and all those things, there's no way you can become that. You say to him, what difference would it make to change your relationships with your children? And you emphasized greatly.
Mm.
Why is that added clarification adjective greatly? Why was that so important for you to pick up and believe in?
Because it honors, well, it honors two things: how badly he wants it and the impact it would have on his life once he achieved it. So to just treat it like, oh, he just wants to improve his relationship with his kids, that's actually not accurate. He wants to improve his relationship with his kids greatly. And again, it goes back to this meaning making thing. And I'll pick on something about you again, Adam. Like, you do hard things very frequently because of how badly you want the outcome of the hard thing. So Toby, Adam's son, his middle child, he's a bit of a mischievous, he's a bit of a wanderer through life. And I mean that as a compliment. And by the way, he's a mid-teenager, so he's not. But Toby's the kind of kid that will see something on social media and be like, that's cool, I want to try it. So Toby learned about this thing called 75 hard. Now, if you guys don't know, 75 hard is for 75 straight days. You got to drink a gallon of water. You got to work out for X number of minutes outside. You've got to read for 30 minutes. Like, there are all these things you have to do for 75 straight days. And if you do them for 74 days and then you screw up, it goes back to day one. Like, you have to do this for 75 straight days. Adam tells me I'm going to do, so Toby's like, I'm going to do 75 hard. And Adam's like, I'm going to do it too. Now, I find this out, Adam's like 22 days into this, whatever day he was. And this is hard. Like, they don't call it 75 hard for no reason. Like, it's not 75 medium, right? It's not 75 easy. It's 75 hard. And I asked him, why are you doing this? And he said, because I don't want Toby to have to do it alone. Like, Adam really wanted Toby to know you have a compadre along this. So for 75 days, Adam put himself through something really uncomfortable. I am 100% convinced that things he does, he being Adam, for Toby, his other children, his wife, people he loves and cares for, he can do stuff like put himself through 75 hard. If I said, Adam, would you do 75 hard and I'll give you $3? He'd be like, no, like, that's not meaningful enough. But can you do 75 hard so Toby knows he doesn't have to do it alone? Yep, I can do that because it was important to me that Toby knows he doesn't have to go through this hard thing alone. So, like, that's why we ask these questions, why we have to honor that Freddie put on the word greatly, because it's like, I want this bad. And as long as we can keep that a part of our language and a part of our thought process, that it increases the likelihood that we will achieve whatever change we're looking for, whether it's healing your relationship with your children or accomplishing 75 hard. It doesn't matter. If you can keep that in your purview, if you can keep that in your mindset, you're just significantly more likely to achieve greatness.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think, again, kind of going back to this, like, we have the possibility to create a meaningful, purposeful life. I think this is the key. I think one of the things we have to do is we have to ask ourselves, what do I want greatly?
Mm.
And then we have to say to ourselves, How come? Why is that the thing? We have to make meaning of why we want what we want greatly. And I think Elliot, you can see through all of these things, he's constantly aiming people at what version of you do you want to be? And Jay says, I want to be the old Jay again. And David says, I want to be the partner that I'm supposed to be. I want to be successful. And Freddie says, I want to be the dad that I'm supposed to be. I want to be involved in these kids' lives. And so I think that's the takeaway from episode 1 that I would say is not only do we need to connect what we're doing to our purpose, but we need to start asking ourselves questions that build meaning to our previous suffering. We need to make sure that we ask ourselves, what do we want greatly? And we need to also presuppose things like, what lights a fire? When things were difficult, what made me get through? So I think Elliott did different things with each of those family members that leads us to a place to say, if I do those things, I will be able to live a purposeful, satisfying life. Do you want to add anything to that?
I do want to add one thing, because I love that. I just want to add, it is okay if your purpose is different or unconventional. To go back to the example of Adam of 75 Hard, if I were to interview 100 people who are doing 75 Hard, why are you doing this? I am 100% convinced 99 of them would give an answer about fitness. I want to be more fit, because 75 Hard it's a fitness journey. I want to be more fit and improve my level of fitness. If I asked Adam why he was doing it, it had nothing to do with fitness. It had to do with the kind of father he wanted to be. So what was Adam's purpose had nothing to do with six-pack abs or whatever. Adam's answer was, I want to be this kind of dad. So like, as you look for your purpose, everybody else might be like, the answer is this, but it's totally okay if your answer is whatever your answer is. Because Adam was comfortable with his answer, he achieved it. He successfully achieved the 75 Hard. I think we get ourselves into trouble. It's like, well, maybe I'm supposed to want a fitness outcome. But no, you have to honor what it is that drives you. And fitness outcomes aren't what drive him. The kind of father he wanted to be in that moment is what drove him. And then thus he achieved the outcome.
Yeah. I think the final thing I'll say to wrap this all up is actually your words. The very end commentary, you said, I hope people who listen to this podcast get inspired. And then you said something I think that you just re-emphasized in a different way. And you said they need to know that love and care are part of the change process. And I think that you just highlighted that, like, we have to love and care about ourselves. And when we love and care about other people, that's when our purpose shines. So thanks for an amazing first episode.
Adam, this was wonderful, bro.
You do amazing work, and I hope we all get to be inspired about how to make our own lives better simply by listening to you do your work.
You do amazing work too. And Adam, this is an amazing experience. This is so cool. I hope everybody listens and is able to pull something out of it and gets inspired by you, your work, and your life, bro.
Thank you. Everybody out there, share this with somebody who needs inspiration, because it's only going to get better from here.
Now, speaking of that, like, you might be watching this on YouTube, or you might be listening to it wherever you're watching it, go to the other places. If you're watching on YouTube, go subscribe to the podcast on Apple. If you're listening on Apple, go hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. But we're excited for you to be here. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody.